Well, I'll tell you what, Steve, how about you? Do you want to share, we're going to admit Krista here. Do you want to share just your thoughts on what what you experienced at Exhibitor, and just kind of recap what your thoughts were on it?
I was actually meeting Cheryl in person there, and she came up and introduced herself to me, which was good, and also seeing Brennan as well, and you guys. But it was kind of interesting. This year, I was there not just as Laguna Displays, but also representing IFIS, which is kind of the EDPA of International. And so I was working their booth, which was kind of interesting. And then I was also had a session I was speaking as well. But I found the best thing I found about it was seeing so many people who I hadn't seen since 2019, the Exhibitor Live 2019, which was right. And it just seemed like there was more of all. I mean, I've gone to this show for years, but it just seemed like this year, it was so much more of just great to see you again, everyone hugging. It was like a different vibe at the show. I don't know, right. Brennan and Cheryl, if you kind of felt the same kind of thing. I didn't see that many of the red badges who are our customers. I mean, I saw them when I was upstairs doing my session, and that worked out really well. But on the show floor, it was mainly, industry partners, suppliers, vendors and stuff like that, which was really good, because these times are kind of trying. So we kind of met some new people and stuff like that. So
definitely. I know I was telling Mel, we flew there together, and when we arrived in Vegas and just walking through the airport, I said, man, this feels really good to be back. And usually you just kind of take it for granted, but it was so nice to be back. First trip I had made in over 2 years. So it was nice just to get out and go somewhere, but also to be back at Exhibitor where we, see a lot of our friends and distributors. Hey, David. Welcome. You might be on mute, but we're just recapping Exhibitor and just kind of sharing our thoughts on it. You were there. Great to see you. What were your thoughts?
It was great to see you as well. I think I caught part of some of the conversation about, I think the best part was getting a chance to see all of our industry friends and catching up with all the folks that we haven't seen for such a long time. So I thought that was encouraging. Floor was dismal. I thought it was a lot of holes. We had two dark booths right next door to us. So I feel bad for those companies that weren't able to go because they lost their money. And again, I'm not going to use this floor as a diatribe for my feelings. I'm sure everybody knows my feelings about this already. But attendance, we had some customers, which was a good thing. Attendance was poor. Lots of students, attendees for the show upstairs, and mostly other vendors who decided to walk the floor instead of exhibiting. So, but otherwise, again, I think that there was some positives to take away. And if we can come away with a couple of opportunities, whether it be with people that we've already done business with, I think that the benefit of being there outweighed, my bitterness of not being there. So,
right. I think that it was a good start. You have to start someplace, and I felt like it was a good start to at least warm up for next year, for June. I think June could be a really good show. Assuming COVID's under control and everything, I think we'll get a lot more of end user attending the show.
Man, maybe.
What do you think, Brennan? It was great to see you.
It's great to see everybody. For me, it kind of reminded me a lot about the old-fashioned a family reunion almost.
Yes.
Sometimes you love it and sometimes you hate it, but it really felt good just to be among our peers, get to see people that you haven't seen in almost 2 years. Highlight was meeting Cheryl and Walt. I've been on Zoom calls with her for about a year, and it's good to meet her face to face. But it's just for me, it kind of helped the morale of just other folks are going through the same other exhibit houses are going through the same thing that I'm going through and our company. So it's just good to be together. I usually go to Exhibitor, obviously, just to see, what's new from our manufacturers and our production people. But, and also, I'm not there to, try to get clients. That's not what I'm there for. But the show attendance was small, but it was really good just to see folks, your own peers. And I kind of consider I've been, doing this for 20 years now, and it's good just to see, people again. It really is.
For sure.
Yeah, but Brennan, it's interesting that you use the term reunion, because I use that term today with Jim as we were talking before the call today. The difference I felt like, if you've ever gone to a high school or college reunion or even a family reunion, is that it's really focused kind of on the past and not so much on the present and the future. But all the conversations that I had with folks at the show, it wasn't about the past. There wasn't a lot of grumbling about what we've gone through over the last year and a half, 2 years. It was really about what they're experiencing right now and what their hopes were moving forward. And I thought that was very, very encouraging and uplifting as I spoke to many of the folks that are here and a lot of other classic distributors in particular.
All right. I agree.
Yeah, it was very positive. Cheryl, since everybody's mentioning you, would you like to share your experience?
Yeah, sorry about the phone. Sales. But yeah, for me, it was a lot of what they're saying, and it was so fun to meet people that I've seen in a box for so long. I will say, Mel and Jim, on another note, perhaps the next time we have a little reception or a little time together. I just happened to turn around and see Steve. I'm like, wait a minute, I recognize that face. So just a thought. We've had these classic conversations. It would be fun if we just had an hour or something where we set aside where we could all find each other. That's just a thought. But for me, the biggest thing that I think I took away was we had, as far as I'm concerned, we had to have the trade show for trade shows, or we can't tell other folks that they need to be having trade shows, right? So exactly, if we had canceled, how can we be legitimate in saying, well, no, you should have all these trade shows and we're here for you. So I think that was the biggest takeaway, is we had to have it. And then for me personally, a lot like Brennan, is I went to meet with vendors. I had a schedule, and it was kind of a tight schedule for a couple of days of things that I knew that I needed to do. Some software, some I&D, some different things that I knew that I needed to fix and our offerings. So it gives me one place to be able to do that, along with seeing all that. But it was, for me, I couldn't be happier that I went, that we got a lot accomplished. And again, it felt like a reunion to me too, just to, I don't think, like Mel, to your point, I don't think it would behoove any of us to talk about what we've been through. We've all been through the same thing. We all feel that pain. I don't think any of us want to relive it. So it was just a matter of, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad that you're here and that you made it. And it didn't matter if they were competitors or whatever. It as dysfunctional as our family is, it's still family, right?
Right. How did it work out for you to find the services and products that you were looking for? You mentioned you had some specific goals in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, I'm going to be going using Exhibit Force. So for me, it was just such a simple way for both Walt and I to be standing there. We had a lot of questions, a lot of things. You get hands-on right there, and because attendance was a little bit low, you got a lot more hands-on than maybe you would normally get, because you don't want to take away from perhaps the end users are walking around or other things that are going on. But we did get a lot of hands-on experience. That was one of our things that we wanted to do. And I will say, just on a side note, something really interesting happened. I had a discovery call with a very large account, and I'm just sitting on the couch, I think at the end of day one, and I look up, and you know people, but with the mask and things, you're just like, I'm thinking, who's that vendor? How do I know that guy? And it turned out it was my end user that I had just had a discovery call. So I grabbed him on the floor because I figured he was there for for something, and he hadn't said to me he was there. So I took the opportunity, and it worked. It really worked out to my benefit. He said to me, "I didn't know you were going to be here. I would have set up a call with you, but regardless, he's followed up, and he appreciated the things I showed him on the floor. So right place at the right time, I guess."
Definitely. Anybody else? I'm trying to think, was anybody else there? I didn't, if you were, I don't believe I saw you there. So nobody else was at the show?
Hey, Steve, Steve, I have a question for you, because you taught a session and you had more interaction with the end users, with the exhibit managers. Kind of what was the mood of that group?
Very positive. They're all excited to come back. And one of the things that in my class, I normally have like around 30 people, and I think I had half, it was like 15 at this time. So it was kind of a more intimate group. So when everyone came in, I said, I know you're all supposed to wear your masks in this room, but feel free to take them off. And they were all so relieved. They took their masks off, and it became, rather than me presenting, it was more of an interactive discussion, my presentation, which was really good. In the past, I've been kind of more lecturing to them, and then at the end I had questions. This time they were asking questions as we went along, and they seemed to be really enjoying their own company. It was pretty much, I think it was one guy, it was predominantly female event managers, and they were all chit-chatting together. It seemed like a very, very positive vibe. I'm hoping, hopefully in June we'll get back up to the normal number of people, but it was great to at least have some people.
So what did they say about their exhibit schedule moving forward and their participation?
Got things in the works. My presentation was on international exhibiting, and a lot of them, the reason they came to my session was because their companies are just starting to do international exhibiting, and they had questions. Basically my presentation is that how and why are US and international exhibit designs different. And so, things like raised floorings, et cetera, et cetera. So they came to the session because they wanted to learn about that. So from what I gathered, most of them hadn't done much international, and their companies in the next few years are looking to kind of expand into the international markets, which is actually really good when you think about, post-pandemic. That's something which we weren't sure was going to really happen.
Hey, Jim, can you share your impressions too? I know you've said a couple comments, but I mean, what did you get out of the show over those 2 days?
I just loved seeing the distributors that we work with, and just to walk the show and find out what other vendors were up to, and kind of just hear what their outlook is for the future months that we have coming up. And everything was just really optimistic. Like, we feel like it's going to get just crazy because we're seeing a ton of activity with quoting right now. We feel like December through whatever, the next several months are going to be just kind of explode on us, which is a great thing. It's a little scary. We have some challenges with materials and so forth, but that looks like it's going to get a lot better after January. So that's good. But no, we had some really positive conversations. I think, like you guys have described, everybody was just glad to be back in person. One thing I'm curious about with the ones that were there, how did you feel about the whole COVID thing and the safety of it? Steve, you mentioned everybody was relieved to take off their masks in that room. Did you guys feel comfortable with it? To me, it seemed a little lax, and I was kind of glad about that myself, but was anybody concerned? Did anybody have any objections to the way that it was handled, or did you feel like it was handled the right way? Cheryl, what did you think about that?
And I was gonna say, yeah. One of the things I found was that, when I was working the booth, I was wearing a mask, but then if somebody came up without a mask, I would just pull it down. And if I went to somebody's booth and they were wearing a mask, I'd put the mask back on. So trying to respect what people were doing.
I don't know about you, but it kind of felt like if somebody came up to the booth without a mask, I guess I found myself feeling like I don't want to intimidate them or make them, so I did pull it down like you did. I don't know. I think people were comfortable either way. I don't think it would have really offended anybody had I kept it on, but I'm with you. I kind of just followed what other people were doing, and I didn't get real close. I tried to just keep some distance, and respect that. But, masks were on about 50% or less of the time, wouldn't you say?
I'd say, Jim, that is probably pretty true. And I think individually, being vaccinated, I was probably less concerned about whether I made that decision to pull my mask down in relationship to someone else who had their mask down, and do the same exact thing as Steve said, I put a mask up in respect of whoever I was speaking to. But I think that perhaps has a lot to do with the comfort level. I noticed we were at some restaurants and pretty much people were, accommodating the rules. It seemed to be more in the trade show floor, half and half of people walking around, some people just keeping them off. And yes, it is a relief to a certain extent, because when you're wearing that mask all day long, you're breathing your own carbon dioxide all day long. So yeah, there's a purpose to it, obviously, but being vaccinated, I think that had a critical component to at least my decision making.
Right. Hey, Robin.
How about you?
Yeah. I was going to mention something. I just wondered how you guys feel about this. I just had a big meeting at a client's. There's like 100 people there Tuesday. And, when you walk in the building, they say you have to wear a mask. But then when we got into this auditorium, they were like, we don't require it. Okay. But here's the thing that I've had so much trouble with, you guys, and it's because of years of force of habit. Handshaking. You want to go shake somebody's hand every darn time. And you've got people who don't mind it and people who do. And I just wanted to mention that. I thought the mask is okay with me because it's pretty easy to read people, but the handshake's the thing that's difficult.
I didn't put my hand out much, but when somebody put it out, I shook their hand.
More than I normally do.
That was kind of, it was a little awkward maybe. What's that, Steve?
Hugging than normal, it seemed, and I didn't find anyone that had, like, when I shook hands with people, no one was like trying to do elbow or fist bump. And most people, men and women, you hadn't seen them in so long, you gave them a hug. That's what it seemed to be. I don't know if you guys felt the same thing, Brandon and Cheryl and David.
I'm a hugger before, after, during all of this. So I normally just go in for the hug, and then I realize that people recoil. I'm like, I'm sorry. But I did find myself that what I did do was I would ask people, I'm like, I'm a hugger. Are you good with it? It was, I'll give you one example. So Adrienne from Court, which I'm sure probably most of you know her, she walked up and we immediately just hugged. We didn't even think about it. And then I realized we were hugging forever. And I said to her, I think we just hugged for 7 minutes and 37 seconds. I'm not sure what's going on here. And she said, well, I read recently that we all need hugs so bad that you hug until someone else is till they let go. And neither of us let go. So it got to the awkward point. But for me, I was more cognizant to say to people, I'm a hugger. Are you okay with it? I don't think I had anyone that said, no, I'd rather you not. But I probably hugged more than I shook hands, to be honest, but that's just kind of me anyway. But I feel like if someone was wearing a mask, obviously that was an indicator to me too. And, that maybe they were a little more uncomfortable, and I was probably a little more trepidatious just to make sure that I was being respectful to what they wanted. Somebody without a mask, I guess maybe it's assumptions, but I assume that they're okay. Shaking hands or hugging or being okay with that. But I don't know if those are good assumptions. I've never done this before. I don't know.
Right or wrong, I think all this is a really good sign that we've come a long way.
Yes.
We're a little reluctant maybe, but we just say, oh, what the heck? And you just go for where, 5-6 months ago, you wouldn't have done that probably. So that's a good sign. Overall, I think we're heading the right direction.
I know for
I
me,
think so. Go on now.
I was going to say, I know for me that the I think I made an assumption, right or wrong, for most of the folks in that exhibit hall, because we've gone through so much over the last year and a half, 2 years. I made the assumption that the vast majority, I'm going to say 85% of the folks that I interacted with were vaccinated. That it just maybe it's an assumption I shouldn't have made, but I thought, given what we've gone through, most of those people probably are vaccinated, which meant that, I was more open to lowering my mask. I was more, as when people approached, certainly people I knew, I was going to shake their hand or give them a hug. I was a little more cautious with folks that I didn't know, but that's the assumption that I made, is that it was kind of a safe zone generally for the folks who were in that room. And I would agree too, Jim, you said that it was a little bit lax, and I would say yes, that exhibitor didn't really enforce anything through, in any way. I was a little surprised that there weren't hand sanitizer stands as far as just in the show hall in general, obviously in booths, but they didn't rent show halls just to have, didn't rent sanitizer stands just to have in the aisles or at the intersections of aisles anywhere in the booth. That struck me as a little bit odd.
Yeah. One thing that, Mel, I think you and I disagree on this, but I just prefer aisle carpet myself. I think it finishes off the show and looks really nice. And I don't really buy into the idea that somehow spreads COVID. I may be alone in this, but I just don't, I think we're past, aren't we, thinking that?
Yeah, I think
so I think it's kind of an excuse to save some money, and it just doesn't look as finished to me, especially for the reception. We're all standing out there on concrete. And I'm not knocking it. For this show, it was probably appropriate, but moving forward, I vote for aisle carpet.
And I vote that we never have aisle carpet again. And it has nothing to do with the spread of COVID.
I'm with Mel. I'm on the international shows don't have aisle carpet, and they have huge shows like that. So I'm with you, Mel.
Okay, I won't be offended, everybody, but let's just take a vote. Who wants aisle carpet? Boy, I bet maybe we're 50-50 here. I don't know.
I think part of it is that from a sustainable standpoint, it's just wasteful, because the carpets don't get used again and again. They often get thrown away after they're used a few times, and it's really unnecessary. I found that as I was watching people walk the aisle, and maybe it's just wishful thinking, that they were much more inclined to kind of step into the booth as a result. And let's face it, I mean, visually, yes, it does look better, but let's not pretend that it's any more comfortable, because the aisle carpet doesn't have padding against it. It's not really any more comfortable than walking on concrete. And Steve, I agree with you. The international shows look great, and they never have aisle carpet anywhere.
I agree, because I think the general contractors and the show managers need to make more money so they don't have that expense.
Yeah.
That's certainly one way to look at it, David. Yes.
I
think
like
COVID right now, COVID's giving them a great excuse to not carpet, I guess, but it'll be interesting moving forward to see what they do. I just like the first day you walk into the show hall and it's all carpeted. It looks so much more finished than it did the night, the previous night when you were there setting up. But again, it's not that big of a deal. I if they don't carpet it again, it's not like a huge issue to me. I just kind of prefer it.
Hey, David, I do have a question for you. So you had kind of an interesting, you guys made an interesting decision to have, whatever you want to call it, a mascot wander the show hall. What prompted that? I mean, what was the idea behind it? Because I think it was pretty effective.
Well, I guess initially, because of the original plan, we had two exhibits. We had a 1010 and a 1020 across the aisle from one another. One was static, and the idea was to draw people into our the 20-footer. We went a little bit more budget conscious in terms of what we were going to put in the 20-footer as a result of what we anticipated. But we had always anticipated we had the static bear in the one booth, and then, of course, my daughter Jordan volunteered to jump in the bear suit. And we were cautious because I know in the past, they weren't necessarily interested in having people walking the floor. And I think that might have had something to do, with, I remembered seeing 6 people in a t-shirt running around or having a computer screen or something. So they consider that to be, extending outside the realm of your booth. I think what happened for us is she was pretty much in the exhibit for the most part of the time. We were just looking for, photo opportunities, and my daughter's a goof, so she enjoyed it. But I think we landed up taking some, we had customers that we had outbound shipping for. And so we just walked the floor together, and it was quite fun. We had a lot of good response, and people were taking their pictures, and my daughter thought it was funny that a lot of people came and said that she needed to take her head off so they could take a picture without her head on. But it was kind of more impromptu. We intended just to be in the exhibit, again, as a photo op opportunity, just to draw in because of the camping theme we had. But it landed up being kind of fun. In fact, there she walks by. There goes the bear. And
did a great job.
And
hey, Jordan, come here.
There, you can see her without her.
Hey, great job with the bear. You worked hard, and it was super hot with that head on.
Thank you.
It was super hot inside. She had this little fan, but the fan was too loud, so she couldn't hear inside. So she landed up doing a lot of hand gestures and everything, which made it kind of cute. But,
you were the hardest working exhibitor.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it was great.
Oh, there you go.
It was so good to see you too.
You too.
Yeah, so it turned out to be a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun, I think, for the other exhibitors that were there. I guess, more so that we had a chance to walk around and have some fun with it. So
yeah,
but it was impromptu in terms of getting her out of the booth. Just happened that way because there wasn't a lot else going on. I think that might have a lot to do with it too.
It was great.
Thanks.
So for the folks who weren't there, do you have any questions of those who were there? Anything that we haven't brought up yet? Anything you want to know? Oh, I'm sure you must have a question or two.
Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, I've always, when I've gone to exhibitor, I've always gone to see, what's new out there, especially the new vendors, not so much the exhibit houses, but the vendors. Because we're an exhibit house, obviously, but I'm trying to kind of see what is new and exciting out there. And I just wondered if anybody had a breakthrough thing that really caught your eye.
I would say in the new product innovation, Robin, is almost everything that they gave awards to was technology related. And I didn't see all the technology related stuff, but there seemed to be a big focus on that. I know one of them, I don't know if you guys know, most of you probably know Dave Brown. Dave Brown, who used to be at Optima and now has moved on to a different company, but the company he's with has kind of a transponder that goes into crates or cases. And that was one of the things that was mentioned as a new product innovation out there, that you can kind of track your package, along the way. And there was a lot more details involved that Dave can talk about it than I know, but I know that was one of the new products that was there. And certainly a lot of software. There were some other things that got promoted as far as softwares that were related to the exhibit industry. I didn't really see much IR or AR like we've seen in the past. It wasn't kind of along those lines. It was other technology innovations.
We did see, I know that there were a lot of LED screens and some curved ones that were really impressive. Did you see that, Mel, where they had the curve?
Well, there was that, and there was that cube. Do you remember what was it? Where was it?
Oh, that was really nice. Yeah, the cube, hanging cube.
Yeah, was that like in the GES booth or the? I don't remember which booth. Do you guys remember?
Well, I don't either. I don't remember, but it was impressive. Just the way it really stood out, the way it was lit.
There was a LED battery. Did you see those? The back walls that had some different, they were like kind of like kiosk or shark fin LED battery back walls. They were pretty, I was impressed with how decent they were. And, who knows, they say the battery life goes, it was extensive throughout a trade show without having to have electric, I thought that was pretty interesting.
So Cheryl, how did they address the issue of shipping? Because you can't really ship LED batteries. Right? Dave, am I wrong? Or I thought, shipping any kind of, lithium batteries was a no-no.
You can ship lithium, they're just considered hazardous material. So
And
if you're not putting it in an
packaging, I think, has to be
airplane,
marked.
You have to disclose
Yeah,
where you're shipping.
and you
yeah.
can't, and I don't think you can ship them air.
Yeah, that's what David said. Yeah. Okay.
You're going on the ground, the boxes just have to be marked because they're shipped as hazardous
Yep.
materials.
I
And
think,
they're
I
adding,
think you
they're adding
can
new
take them
limitations
via
to the
air
amount
though.
of charge.
What?
They can
I
only be
think-
charged to a certain point too.
Hmm.
I think you can take them via air because you're allowed to take power tools.
You
Which
can do
all-
up to
They just can't be
99.9
connected.
watts. Yeah,
they
you can do
can't
up to
be connected.
99.9 watts. Like on a laptop battery, you can't have over, you can't be 100 watts or over watt hours.
It's good to know.
Learn something on these calls, don't you?
Done a lot of research on batteries. They've come a long ways. I mean, I could see, a lot of electrical requirements being dropped in the future, just as they continue to expand on battery technology.
So Cheryl, was there anything else that you saw that was new and innovative?
That was the one that kind of stuck out to me. I mean, to me, I would be curious, and this doesn't answer your question, but I kind of wanted to know what people thought about the people that weren't there or that did a poor showing. Which I understand some people had spent money and didn't make money over all these months. So obviously they had to cut back, but there was one particular vendor, I think it was raised flooring. I don't know if anybody remembers. The first day he was in the back corner and he just had a table on concrete with a piece of raised flooring. Did anybody see that?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That's all he had was a piece of raised flooring on a table. I don't even know if he had a company name up there. That one, see, and it's what we tell our customers. These are the things you want to avoid because people will talk about the bad just as much as they talk about the good. But for whatever reason, I really remember that guy. I even tried to talk to him because I felt kind of sad for him. But, so for me, it was interesting to see the people that made the best of what they had there and, did as much as they can, because I wasn't judging anybody that didn't, except if they really just didn't try at all. The other one that stood out to me was the pink balloons. And I don't remember again who that was. Does anybody remember? I think it was an exhibit house, but I asked them what the balloons stood for. I thought maybe it was breast cancer awareness. I thought maybe we were supposed to count the balloons. It was none of those things. She literally said to me, we tried to figure out the cheapest thing to do and we came up with balloons.
I think that was Exhibit Concepts, the booth over there.
Was that?
It was fun to watch them break all the balloons on the show teardown though.
I bet that's what they should have taken a video of that and put it out there. I thought Exhibit Concepts had the elephant.
Yeah, I think that was the same booth. I think the elephant is in front and the balloons are in the back of it. At least I thought it was connected to it because
I'm not sure.
I thought the balloons were mirror show management.
I know that they had a cool little sign about blowing up, that things are blowing up, and the marketing piece was good, but even that sign didn't have a name on it. So I really never figured out who. And I did go talk to them. I think they had the bracelets too, whether you wanted to hug, keep your distance, or whatever. I don't remember, but yeah. So that to me was a little interesting. I found a lot of vendors completely unmanned. Nobody, like, I know that there was one vendor that's a decent vendor, and they had one young lady in the booth that never spoke to anybody. She stood on her phone. I went over a couple of times. I at least gave my card and said, hey, tell my rep I said hi. So that to me is interesting, because if you do, especially companies like that, there are those of us who use them and end users walking around, and we tell people how they're supposed to act at a trade show. To me, it's interesting when they don't follow that. I mean, I don't care if you have one person in there, especially with to David's point, with the cost and things that people had to go through, but at least have someone that's going to be friendly and man the booth and talk to people.
Yeah.
Hey Cheryl, did you attend the Women in Exhibition breakfast?
I did.
Yeah, would you mind sharing with the group your impressions?
Yeah, that was probably one of the highlights of my trip, to be honest. I'm sorry I didn't even bring it up, but it was so well done. Jen was a speaker on there, and she was not because she's with Classic, but she was actually one of my favorites. She did a really great piece on basically just how to take better care of yourself and how to make sure that you're taking care of you, especially so many of us travel and, you know, we're all over the place, especially right now. But they had a panel and each person spoke. The B Matrix marketing manager was on there. They had an end user marketing manager, forgive me, and one other person, I believe there was 4. Katina helped put that together as well. But it was just a really great, they each presented, but then it was a question and answer, and a lot of really good information came out of that for me. I actually took quite a bit of notes. It was just a breakfast, and just how it was so important that we navigated through this hard process and what to do to move forward. And things that you probably thought were important aren't as important anymore. So, you know, for me, back to one of the points I keep saying to people, blame COVID as much as we can for the things we need to change and the processes and all of these things, because that's going to run out soon, right? So yeah. I found that was probably one of the markers there. You know, as bad as COVID is, it does give us a platform to change and blame things. And, you know, I'm sorry, it's just COVID, whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent. But for me, it was a very positive. I think Jen even gave me an idea of a sun lamp. She uses a sun lamp for 10 minutes a day, just to put the sun on her face, especially during the wintertime. And in Ohio, it's gray here and then it gets dark so soon. It was just little tips like that you know, at first I thought it was a little bit frou-frou. And the more I thought about it, I thought, I might actually take up some of these things. But yeah, it was really a really good add-on to the event.
Yeah, I know both Jen and Katina were happy with the attendance. There was, I believe, about 105 women attended.
I would say I thought there was over 100. I didn't know what the count was, but I know that we were packed in, and I think even more showed up than what they thought because there was some standing room.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about trends, you know, and things. Mel, how many, what do you think the percentage of each booth having some type of light box or backlit graphic was?
Well, I think it was probably about 50% that was in. I mean, would you agree about 50%?
I was thinking maybe even higher than that. That had some light boxes of some type.
I would say one thing about the booths in general, as you walk the floor, and I'd be interested to hear others comment, is that there were a lot more islands than I thought there would be. And I think that's probably due to people that had put their deposits down a year and a half, 2 years ago. So they, rather than lose their deposits or lose their money, they continue to be within those islands itself. So I was surprised at the number of islands. They weren't as elaborate as they've been in the past. You know, people obviously had a 20 by 20 or 20 by 30 space, and they didn't fill it in the same way. Now, it's not true of all, but you know, some were a little more elaborate, but they were all tasteful. They were all well done. They took that space and filled the space without necessarily kind of going over the top. And I thought that was an interesting trend, because it's one of the things that we're having to advise clients right now who don't have the budget but still want to go large. How do you do it without necessarily, you know, doing something huge and elaborate and that still has impact on the trade show floor?
I thought there were a lot of bare spaces and open spaces on the floor. To talk about earlier, talk about the small space. There was a booth behind us in your aisle, Mel and Jim. He was there on the first day and he was gone the second day. It turned out they allowed him to move.
Yeah, that's what happened. He didn't like his space. It was engagified, and he asked show management if he could move to a more central location where there was an open space, and they said yes. I don't know if you saw it, but the two of them just picked their booth up and just walked the booth to another space in the hall.
Yeah, no, I saw that, and he got a space right in the middle of the hall, prime space, right where the big giant space where they had the open floor for the welcome reception they did on the floor. But again, I don't know that I necessarily agree, because now I have 3 dark booths completely around me, and to the left of me, there was no booth that was dark, and they put tables and chairs, of which everybody used to cross our booth to go to the tables and chairs and eat their lunch. And then the bar was put up in between whenever there was those functional things. So I thought that was an odd allowance to allow that to happen. And again, we're all unhappy about the amount of attendance there, and and it was probably because it was an easy move for him to pick up his 20-foot back wall and his little soapbox he was standing on to do his presentation, but didn't agree with that move though.
Yeah. Any other questions about the show, or because I was going to ask what types of projects you're working on now and what your outlook is for the next few months.
Before we move on to the next topic, as obviously the people who were there know, they did something very different this year where they allowed parties on the trade show floor after when the show closed. And they also had the exhibitor reception in the middle of the show floor. What did everyone think about that? I mean, I thought it was great that we didn't have to go to like a separate place. We could be all in the same spot, and then the exhibitors got to show their exhibits off after show hours. Again, I know I keep going back to international, but that's very typical. Anyone that's been to Euroshop, they always have all the parties are on the show floor after the show closes, so you maximize the space. What did everyone think of that?
Sure, seems like a smart way to do it. I mean, to have them in this show so you can, if you wanted to walk over to your booth, you could.
Yeah, I liked it on the show floor as well. It would have been nicer, I think, to have more bars intermixed so that people would then have a chance to actually go to different spots. It was all centered in the middle. So probably 90% of the folks who were there were in conjunction to the booths and the large footprints that were in the middle of the hall. But I think it was a whole lot better than the pre-function area, which was generally overcrowded and loud. So I would prefer that they would continue to, if I were to go, to do that again in the hall. I thought it worked well.
So Steve, if you liked or didn't like it, in particular in reference to Optima, you can blame me, because I was having a conversation with Gina about 6 or 7 weeks ago, and she was telling me that they were struggling to find a room within Mandalay Bay where they could have their normal reception. And I said, why don't you just have it in the booth? And that's what they did. It was great for us because we were an aisle over, and so there was a lot of traffic, and a lot of those people kind of wandered over to us during the strategic partner hour. So I certainly didn't have any objection to that. I think the downside of that is you get people attending your reception that you really don't want to attend your reception, because it's open, so everyone feels that
everybody's invited.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, one thing I know they only had 2 days of full versus 3 days, but the different receptions, hospitality, that some of our vendors like to have, it seemed like it all happened from like 4 to 5:30 on Monday. And it was hard to like go here, go there, and actually really enjoy, I wish they could spread it out a little bit more. But again, you only had 2 days, to do that. So,
well, and I think in this case, since it was only 2 days, they figure a lot of people are going to head out Tuesday afternoon. And that's what Mel and I actually did too.
Actually, I took an earlier flight as well.
Yeah, so I think that's what the thinking was probably for this. The first day is you're going to grab a lot more people.
Sure.
And there was 2 6s instead of 3 4s. So same amount of hours, shorter time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But what's weird about that, David, is that I felt like I didn't get to see all the people who were there. I still felt a little bit constrained, even though the hours, and I was there early and kind of stayed late. Generally, on the second day, Jim and I left. But, I looked at our kind of list of leads or people who visited the booth, and there was at least 1/3 of those people that I never had a chance to talk to at all. And, given that, we've had the year and a half and only had this or conversation, there was a little, that part was a little disappointing. And I'm not sure if that's on me or it's just because the restrictive hours.
Mel, do you know if they're planning in June to have 3 days? Go back to 3?
I think it returns to the normal hours. I mean, is that your understanding, David, as well?
I didn't go to look at next year's. I think it's too soon. And again, in another busy time. So I didn't get to see what their plan is for the new June show.
Okay.
Because he was working the IFAS booth with me, and he said that June is going to be back downstairs again, and it's going to be back down to the normal hours. And he said also that they're going to try and go back to doing when the sessions, they're at different times to the show floor, because this time a lot of people complained that there were sessions going on the same time as the show floor because of the extended hours. I asked him about why this is the first year that they were doing the parties on the show floor, and he said people have been asking to do that for years, but it's been a liability issue. But for some reason this year they got around the liability issue, so that may be a permanent trend in the future.
I wonder what the liability issue would be.
Walking into exhibits and spilling stuff everywhere, and then
Bridge
somebody
header
suing
falling on
them.
somebody, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think COVID allowed some reconsideration of that, just by everything that I read when this was all erupting about, instead of having separate breakout rooms and having people spreading through more real estate due to COVID, there was more emphasis on bringing breakout sessions into the actual show area, around perimeters of the floor space, and having as much participation for the wide variety of, the exhibition time, the breakout sessions and whatnot, and trying to contain as much of that as into one area as possible. So that's the only thing I could think of, that they allowed that, the parties after exhibition hours in the space, in the exhibit hall.
One improvement was the awards. It was in a nicer area, a nicer room. In the past, we kind of went back to the back of the hall, and it just didn't seem quite as nice. This was a little bit nicer room that they had it in.
Yeah.
I don't know what they plan to do.
Yeah,
next time.
sounds good.
Hey, Tim, do you have any comments on what's going on in your world? Any projects, specific types of projects you're working on, or?
Yeah, we're starting a new project this week. Actually, we had to put about a 4 or 5 day hold on it. It's already up in the projects department to go on the floor as soon as they get the drawings signed off on, because we were told all along it was a 20 by 30 island, and it turned out to be a half of a peninsula, which really isn't going to change things that much, but we had to at least look at it. So that's going to start. It's for Expo West. And the same client just said this morning, hey, do you guys do point of sale displays in stores? I said, what are you thinking? So he showed me some pictures, and I said, yeah, we can do that. So anyway, they're looking to spend more money with us, which is nice. We just finished a handful of projects. Rental, I think the one that you guys let me know about, it was Orlando, a half a day show, which I thought was interesting. It was like a 12 to 5 o'clock show.
Wow.
One day. But they were happy. It looked great, and they were very pleased with it. A couple other small upgrades, but I'm working with a couple other clients for Expo. I don't anticipate a lot next year, but I think it'll be good. We'll just see what happens.
Are most of you experiencing a lot more quote requests, design requests? You feel like it's picking up? Kind of feel like this is the calm before the storm. We feel that way anyway. It has been a little bit lighter in terms of activity, but now all of a sudden in the last few days, it's just getting a little crazy. Like, I think people are realizing where we're at on the calendar, and that we have the holidays coming up and they have to work around that. But a lot of island, like in our situation, we're seeing a lot of island, larger island, customized island quote requests.
Well,
lot
Jim,
of
I don't
other
know about
things too.
on our side, because we do asset management, inventory and so forth. Our larger clients are telling us they're getting ready to blow up for 22.
Yeah,
They're getting it back. And I think the expansion of international travel will be big, especially for medical events and those types that require a lot of that. It'll certainly be a benefit to Orlando, even outside of trade show, because they rely on international travel just for that town. But
Yeah.
the word is, and we hope that's going to happen, is that they're going to be back to full schedule starting in 22. The buzz
Right.
seems to be second quarter before everybody kind of gets their sea legs and then have people traveling to shows. They still see some corporations not wanting to send people, perhaps because of liability issues. So attendance, at least on the events that we've been working over the last 3-4 months, have been super light. So hopefully that changes as things progress going forward.
Hey, Krista, what are you seeing? Like, obviously, Ted stopped by the booth at the show and he was super upbeat. Are you seeing a lot of activity as well?
Yeah, we're working on show for IBS, so that's a 50 by 90 exhibit. And then we're working on two clients for hymns, so those are fairly large booths as well. And then we're just trying to get with our clients and make sure that they're prepared, because we have a lot of small shows that tend to come up right as January begins. And I mean, typically everybody falls off the face of the earth around the holidays anyway. So just trying to do that also with the idea of COVID and things taking longer. And so getting them prepared for that. So yeah, we're definitely picking up. We have kind of started to gain that same momentum that we had before COVID. So, which is nice to see.
Yeah, and it was, if you'll pass it on, it was great to see Ted at the show. I wasn't expecting to see him there, and it was good to see him.
Yeah, he was glad to be able to come in for a short bit, so that worked out well.
Hey, Jen, how about you? What's going on at exhibits? Yeah. Jen, are you there?
I am here. I just sat down at my desk. I was out in the warehouse removing vinyls and all the funness that goes along with logistics. Anyway, we are slowing down now, much like some others here with the holidays. So, but it's kind of scary because you're just waiting for the other foot to drop and people just come at you with the last minute things. Looks like 2022 is going to be picking up for us as far as our clients and the shows that they're going to be attending. So that's good. Maybe they might have reduced their space, their exhibit spaces, but they want a lot more bells and whistles to go in it. So we're just trying to communicate and get all those details from them and deliver.
Yeah.
So thanks for asking.
Jen, are they looking at going to the same number of shows, or have they pared that down as well?
So some of our bigger clients are just doing their same shows that they do every year, but they haven't been able to do for the past 2 years. So they're just gonna, they've committed to doing like the poultry show, which is here in Atlanta, or, the Boston seafood and that kind of thing. I do have one client that seems to be acquiring more companies as the months go by. So whatever shows those companies that they're acquiring would normally go to, they are filling those booth spaces, and which is keeping me very busy. So, if they were doing 250 shows a year this past, like in 2019, they're doing 500 and something in 2022. So it's a lot.
Oh boy.
Hey, Derek, you're always juggling a couple things between builds and I&D and just kind of, doing the normal stuff that you do. What are you seeing out there?
We're seeing some increase in business. One of our clients has me working on some budget numbers. They're potentially adding 3 additional shows for 2022. Most of the clients as of right now have just been on a stick with their existing past schedule, repurpose, maybe rebrand a little bit. But they're planning on doing a full show listing for 2022 as compared to the last 2 years. So we've seen some uptick in work, probably the second half of this year. Shows finally started coming back here in Pittsburgh, so we started doing some I&D work, and that picked up. Attendance is still really poor. We did a show, Ed Spaces, last week. Registered attendees 515, and it's normally around 3 to 3,500. So attendance is still really low from what we're seeing. But everybody's excited to get back to shows. Every client we talk to is super excited. They're starting to get a little shell shocked with costs, because costs have gone through the roof. But other than that, everyone's still planning on going back to shows as soon as they can, as soon as their companies will release them to go, basically.
How about labor, as far as finding labor?
It's like everybody else, tough. We're managing. We started probably last spring. We started cultivating a whole new group of leads on our end. So we took it upon ourselves to start training more people. But in general, in the different cities out there, we've actually seen such labor shortages that even our I&D partners that we do their work for here in Pittsburgh, they've requested our teams to start going to other cities because there's short labor there. So we've seen some expansion of our area out of request, not due to the fact that we want to expand it, but more so our long-term partners have requested additional assistance because their labor pools are either tapped or struggling. So, but the upside is, I mean, we're hiring. We hired a new business development salesperson just this past week. We're hearing good things for 2022, 2023. So my logic is this might be coming into 2022 is probably going to be the year for us to strike and expand again. Okay. And that's the game plan.
All right.
Okay, we're almost done here. But Heidi, do you have anything to share about your world?
Nothing that Dave didn't already say. So
okay. And James, real quick, how's the rental world?
It's been very busy. We've, I mean, really kind of labor and inventory are the biggest challenges we've had as well. It's up until about last week, we were extremely busy with a lot of orders going out. It did kind of taper down a little bit, like Jim was saying, but man, there's a lot of requests for quotes for December through March right now. Just looking like it's going to be kind of, we're in this little kind of calm before the storm or eye of the storm where it's going to be super busy again. So, and yeah, I mean, it's just, kind of experiences the same thing as everyone else with supply shortages and stuff. So we're just trying to make sure we can come up with materials to, get orders out for everybody. So that's kind of the biggest thing is getting things in and out and check back in and, so we can get them ready to go back out again.
And James, I hear the vast majority of the requests are islands. Is that true?
Yeah, there's been a lot of islands, particularly the stuff we're quoting right now for upcoming stuff. I think the inlines will come. People generally, know that they can get an inline turned quicker. So I think we'll have a lot of inlines for the first quarter. It's just most of the stuff we're quoting right now is islands. So.
Okay, well, if nobody else has anything, I think we're a couple minutes over. So, hey, thank you, everybody. Great to see you. It was great to see those of you that were at the show, and have a good month. We'll talk next month.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for sharing.
See you guys.
Thanks. Next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right.